Is my car fixed yet? It's the Studebaker. You know, the one with the little doggy. In the window that goes. Carol Burnett made millions laugh for 11 years straight. But in 1977, she did something that made her entire crew cry. The episode aired once and broke viewers' hearts. Critics called it brilliant. Awards poured in. But Carol never watched it again. Not once in 47 years. She said it was too real. The sketch hit so close to home she couldn't bear seeing herself in it. What made America's Funniest Woman refuse to face her own performance? Carol Burnett was born on April 26, 1933 in San Antonio, Texas. From the very beginning, her life was surrounded by pain. Her parents, both alcoholics, were unable to care for her. Her father worked at a movie theater, but he couldn't hold a job for long. Her mother drank just as much and wasn't emotionally present. Both would later die from alcohol-related illness. By the time Carol was just a toddler, she had already learned what it felt like to be unwanted. The people meant to love her most had chosen bottles over bedtime stories. It was a lonely, unpredictable world, and Carol learned early on that laughter could protect her from breaking. When her parents fully gave up on raising her, Carol was taken in by her maternal grandmother, Mabel White. In 1940, they left Texas and moved to Hollywood. But there was no red carpet waiting. They lived in a single, cramped room in a rundown boarding house surrounded by other broken souls. Addicts, mentally ill tenants, people clinging to hope while starving on welfare. Carol and her grandmother survived on $20 a week, barely enough for food, let alone a dream. But Mabel gave Carol what she'd never had before: unconditional love. She was poor, yes, but she was finally safe. In the middle of that chaos, Carol invented an escape. She created a pretend twin sister named Karen. Karen was everything Carol wasn't: confident, beautiful, always smiling. And Carol made her so real that even the other tenants believed she existed. She'd run up the fire escape, change clothes, change her hair, and reappear as Karen, charming and playful. Then minutes later, she'd return as Carol. The fact that these adults, many of them barely hanging on themselves, believed it says a lot about both Carol's acting skill and how much everyone in that house needed something joyful to believe in. But some escapes were more real than others. Every Saturday, Carol and her grandmother would go to the movies. Tickets cost 25 cents for two, more than 10% of their weekly income. For those few hours, Carol left behind the peeling paint, the shouting, and the fear. On screen, life sparkled. Stars danced, people kissed. There was food, beauty, and order. But when the credits rolled, survival came back into focus. They couldn't afford toilet paper at home, so they'd quietly steal it from the theater bathroom. They weren't ashamed, they were desperate. Even at 7 years old, Carol understood what it meant to be hungry for more than food. One day, sitting in that darkened theater, she heard Johnny Weissmuller's famous Tarzan yell echo through the room. It hit her like lightning. At home, she began mimicking it obsessively, perfecting every pitch and rhythm. She had no idea she was training her voice, building the kind of breath control most singers take years to master. It was just a game, but it became a signature. That yell would later bring down audiences in laughter and applause during her live shows. What began as a child's imitation became one of the first tools in her comedy arsenal. By the time Carol finished high school, she had one dream: journalism. Her mother had always wanted to be a writer, and Carol felt obligated to finish what her mother couldn't. UCLA was the goal, but when the time came to enroll, she faced a brutal reality. She didn't have the $50 needed to cover tuition. That's around $600 today. For most people, it would have meant the end. And for a while, it seemed like it was. Then something strange happened. A stranger whose identity she never learned stepped in and paid the amount. No strings, no explanation, just enough money to change her life. At UCLA, she planned to study journalism. But one elective theater class flipped her world upside down. In that room, something inside her clicked. She wasn't shy anymore. She wasn't poor or invisible. She was funny, loud, and completely alive. Her professors noticed it. So did her classmates. She could sing, act, and make people laugh in the same breath. Suddenly, journalism looked too small for her. She switched majors. It was risky, but for the first time in her life, she wasn't surviving. She was dreaming. That risk paid off quickly. At the end of her freshman year, she was named most promising newcomer in UCLA's theater program. It was more than a title. It was a prophecy. It told her she wasn't crazy for chasing this dream. It gave her the courage to push harder, to take the stage seriously, and to stop apologizing for wanting more than just survival. The award opened doors, giving her better roles in school productions and support from mentors who could see she wasn't like the others. She wasn't just another hopeful actress. She had the kind of spark you couldn't fake. Carol Burnett was just a college junior in 1954, working as an usherette for 65 cents an hour when her life took a strange turn at a party in San Diego. She wasn't there to celebrate. She was stuffing hors d'oeuvres into her purse to bring home to her grandmother. That's when a sharply dressed stranger approached her. He wasn't in showbiz. He was a millionaire shipbuilder from La Jolla. Carol told him she dreamed of going to New York to make it on Broadway, but couldn't even afford UCLA's $43 tuition. The man made her an offer that sounded too good to be true. $1,000 each for her and her boyfriend, Don Soyan. But he gave them 3 rules. Never reveal his name. Only use the money to get to New York. And if they made it, they had to help others do the same. He didn't want credit. He just said someone had once helped him and he was paying it forward. His wife would later say he'd done this kind of thing before for gas stations, restaurants, and people chasing dreams. With the $2,000 in hand, Carol and Don packed up and left UCLA behind. They headed east. In 1954, even though Carol had never been further than Texas, she didn't know anyone in New York, but she didn't care. She said later, "I didn't know enough to be scared." They landed in the city and checked into the Algonquin Hotel at $9 a night. It was too much. The money started disappearing fast. At one point, Carol broke down crying while making a collect call to her family, who begged her to come back.